controversial. And I do think that it's worth noting that we've also received no funding when it comes to the elections, for example. So the cost of broadcasting these events of national interest far exceeds the revenues that we can generate as the public broadcaster. Currently, the pattern is continuing because we are obliged to ensure that we continue covering events of national interest, which constitute the public mandate programming. I'll give you an example. All of the funerals that we have to cover, the commissions of inquiry, the public hearings, the election manifestos, and as well as the current media briefings where we have to displace our programming in order to accommodate the need to align with the public mandate. That has cost us quite significantly. In fact, the current figures that we have, we're looking at a shortfall of about 2 billion because of the need to fulfill this mandate. So this is really key. If I go to the next slide, which talks to the progress in terms of the turnaround, I do need to emphasize, as Jack was saying, that the turnaround plan that we've shared with you is a product of collaborative effort that involves ourselves, the department, Treasury, and I see GTEC is also represented here. So essentially, this means that the plan contains well-considered and agreed to key activities that are required and expected to be implemented in order to make this organization successful and sustainable. And when we talk about financial sustainability, it's not an end in itself. We want to be financially viable in order for us to fulfill the public mandate of serving South Africans. And I think it is also for this reason that there are monthly monitoring meetings that we have with the department, with Treasury. So there is no surprise when it comes to all of the activities that we need to implement in as far as the strategy is concerned. And that monitoring looks at the progress on the implementation of the turnaround plan, but also at the utilization of the bailout funds, which have been ring-fenced, and these do not include the compensation for employees. So essentially, if you look at these key pillars, the turnaround plan is structured around maximizing and increasing revenue growth, but also to ensure that we deal with the huge cost base that we have. And there are three areas that we've looked into in this respect: is the compensation of employees, it's the costs associated with content acquisition, as well as the signal distribution, which constitutes about 12% of our expenditure. And I would also want to talk to the issue of operational efficiencies that we've been involved in. We've been able to reduce operational costs as the SABC as much as we can. I mean, one of the examples that we've used in the past fiscal is the elections coverage that we ensured that in a budget of 30 million, which was self-funded, we only spent 10 million for a national election coverage that was quite well received. This was indeed a significant saving that was achieved through operational efficiencies. And that same thinking has now been cascaded throughout different divisions of the SABC, because we want to ensure that we fulfill our mandate as well as ensuring the commercial viability of the public broadcaster. The other thing that we've done quite well is when it comes to governance. As Jack was saying, we inherited an organization that had all sorts of issues when it comes to governance. Whether you're looking at the SIU investigations, the public protector, and all of those. And inevitably, we have had to spend in order to deal with some of the costs of the cases that are involved there. But I'm pleased to inform the committee that if you compare the legal cost between the past fiscal and financial year 2019 and 20, there's been a 46% reduction in terms of the legal costs. We had over 205 disciplinary cases that we inherited, and all of those are complete now, with the exception of about 5 of those. So the commitment that we have is to reestablish those sound governances across the organization, but at the same time to instill the necessity for employees to understand that we're embedding principles of good corporate governance in the organization. In terms of revenue generation, a lot has been done in that respect. We've had to get some diversified forms of revenue generation. For example, if we talk about the content licensing deals, previous deals were grossly undervalued in terms of our content. We have now started a process of revaluing all of our content, and we're generating vastly improved revenues from this stream. The second thing that we've also embarked on is to review all of our sales policies to ensure that as an organization, we can be more competitive as well as agile, especially when it comes to speed to market. We've also started automation processes to be able to have quicker responses to some of the advertisers as well as the clients. The board also approved a strategy for the disposal of non-core assets, and we've now, with the approval of the shareholder, been selling some of the non-core assets that really focuses on properties. We sold flats in London and properties all over the country. In terms of cost reduction, which is really key for us, a lot of work has gone into addressing our unsustainable cost base. And that's why year on year, you may have seen that there's been significant improvement on the net losses. If you take 2017, we're standing at 1.2 billion from a net loss point of view. And in the past fiscal, we're at about 444 million. And that trend is going to continue. When we came to present to the committee in 2018, one of the issues we highlighted was the exorbitant cost of sports right acquisition. And this was really one of the biggest contributors in terms of the cost base of the SABC. We have had to renegotiate quite hard to make sure that we can reduce the cost of sports rights. Just to give you a sense, one set of sports rights, we managed to negotiate from an expected arrangement of about 1.4 billion that was happening for over 5 years, for many years, in fact. And based on that, we were able to renegotiate, and we're having now the same sports rights for 360 million over 5 years. So essentially, we moved from 1.4 billion over 5 years to 360 million over 5 years. There's another one that we managed to renegotiate from a 550 million, which was happening for every 5 years. And we've been able to reduce that to 110 million over 5 years. One of the things that we also have had to do was to decommission TV properties that are not performing in terms of audience ratings as well as revenues. This practice is now standard whenever we're evaluating programming for possible recommissions. And obviously all this we do without breaching our license conditions. We are also engaging Sadc quite aggressively regarding the efforts to reduce the cost of signal distribution, because this accounts for 12% of our expenditure. This is an ongoing process, and will inform the committee once negotiations in that respect have concluded. The third point when it comes to cost reduction is the cost of employee compensation. And this has been a huge cause of concern for many years now. And we know the various issues that caused it. But I would want to talk about some of the issues that we have had to do to address this. We have been able to review the utilization of our freelancers to ensure that there's alignment between permanent employees and possibly what freelancers can do. We looked, for example, at where the role of the freelancers could be performed as part of the roles of the existing employees in terms of ensuring that we can control the high cost base of compensation. We've also developed rate cards for freelancer remuneration in all of the various divisions, sports, news, as well as radio. And the idea there is to streamline processes and reduce unnecessary costs. I think what is important also, honorable members, is that despite all of these efforts, employee compensation is still extremely high. The forecast for this year is that we're going to have to pay over 200 million every month for both permanent employees as well as freelancers. Essentially, for every 40 cents that we generate, for every R1 that we generate on revenue, we're going to have to spend over 40 cents towards employee compensation. What is required for us to ensure that we can break even is a 700 million reduction in compensation, in employee compensation. What we're also concerned about is that we're only spending 23% on content acquisition. As you appreciate, this is our core business, and we should be spending more to make sure that we can enhance our revenue generation activities. This is why we've now developed this target operating model that Ian is going to take us through with the accompanying organizational structure to make sure that we have a modern organization that is agile and competitive, not for its own sake, but to make sure that we can suitably fulfill our mandate. The issue of skills audit, as I had said earlier on, we have finished phase 1, and phase 2 is going to be finalized at the end of this month. This has given us a sense as the SABC when it comes to the qualifications, the skills and the competencies that our employees have. And it'll help us as we look to develop the various plans on talent management, training and development, succession, career pathing, as well as the retention of our employees. In conclusion, from my side, the task of turning the SABC around means that we need to take the difficult decisions, as Jack was saying, to avoid its collapse. This institution is quite critical and it needs to be sustainable. I do know that our objective is to ensure the long-term existence of a resilient and viable public broadcaster that continues to deliver on its mandate. Our aim is to ensure we create an SABC that will outlive us, an SABC that will survive another 84 years and continue to serve millions of South Africans who rely on it for education, for information, as well as for entertainment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Good evening to yourself, the Minister, the Deputy Minister, our other Honourable members and the other guests at this session. I am going to take you through the current status of our turnaround plan in a bit more detail, and then I'm going to talk about the financial performance for the organisation as we currently stand. So with the introduction that the CEO has done, I think I'm really just going to skip to the current status and share with you that after an approximate 9-month journey, on the 13th of September 2019, our turnaround strategy was approved. It was anticipated to be executed over a period of up to 36 months, with deliverables categorized in terms of immediate, in other words, 0 to 3 months. Short to medium term was anticipated to be about 3 to 18 months, and then the longer term period of up to 36 months. We received the first tranche of the bailout on the 7th of October 2019, and the final tranche this year on the 30th of March. And as such, the implementation of our turnaround strategy also started up in phases. As at the end of April, we can report that at an overall level, the organisation deemed 46% of its actions as completed and in place, with 33% of those in planning, and only approximately 13% of these activities as not yet having been started. Forgive me, Chair, I pressed the wrong button. There you go. With respect to the detailed pillars, governance and financial sustainability, we can report 57% of the activities completed and 32% started as in progress. The CEO has also referred to activities around our asset portfolio. If you look at supply chain management on this specific item, it is about the acquisition of content and the engagement with Treasury to find mechanisms that makes us more agile. And there are various activities around TV license collection fees that are longer term initiatives. If you consider the status on human resources, we can report 30% completed at the end of April, 30% in progress. A number of these activities will rapidly gain momentum now with the establishment of our operating model. Looking at content and platforms, we are able to say that 63% have been completed, 25% are started and in progress. And finally, on digital and transmission migration, we are at 33% completed and 67% that is in progress. And again, a number of these activities are over the longer period. We do monitor progress monthly, as the CEO indicated. As of the end of June, we are also going to be reporting on due and overdue activities. But given that we're 8 months into our journey, we do not believe that any of the activities are overdue yet. I'm now going to move on to financial performance, Honourable Chair. Linking on to what the CEO said, it is clear that progress has been made in recent years, as can be seen in this slide, and particularly so also under the auspices of the current management since 2018 to date. The progress, however, is also the result of a host of activities, included but not limited to operational efficiencies, cost savings, oversight, monitoring and accountability, and the driving of the necessity of applying sound commercial principles to every activity that we perform. I was recently reminded of a presentation to the then PCC in October 2018, where we in depth went into the cost-saving initiatives and optimization initiatives that were planned. And I did think that it would be prudent for us to remind ourselves of the current status on these activities approximately 18 months later. As the CEO indicated, programs, film, sports rights are all currently being acquired in terms of sound commercial principles. We are investing much smarter, we believe, and this despite the fact that our goal always remain a combination of financial sustainability, developmental responsibilities and mandate. Yes, the conversation around sports of national interest is maybe not necessarily where we would have wanted it to be, but given the significant gains on some of our major sporting rights, I do believe that we have succeeded in securing financial sustainability through those activities. We have also assessed all our production facilities to ensure that there's maximum utilization and return on investment, and we will ensure that these activities, these production facilities are used for the purpose and are fully utilized at that. Historic contracting practices and poor contract performance on all our program, film and sports rights are being eradicated as all of these contracts are up for renewal, and as such there are sound performance criteria being part of the contracts. Exit clauses are being negotiated, regular performance discussions take place to ensure that programs deliver on the reason why we acquired them for. Our long-term capital plan is based almost solely on a combination of solid financial return on investment or benefit realization. The tracking thereof is in place. Funding is allocated, internal funding is allocated based on these criteria, and as such we hope that we can ensure that all the funding is suitably applied where it should have been. In terms of productions, broadcast, we have established what we called back then in 2018 a shared service mindset, where we use one team instead of many teams for broadcasting activities. We use freelancers in the regions to do regional broadcasting or productions. The broadcast cost per production is interrogated and further optimized all the time, noting that even at the onset, the business case is only approved should it be financially viable and commercially sound. We are, with respect to broadcasting of special events, we these days do what we call dipping in and out. So we do no longer spend 9 hours on a specific event that is a whole day event. The audit of our signal and distribution network has started. It was interrupted by the state of disaster, but it is ongoing and we hope to see the benefits from that. In the meantime, there is a new transmission technology in the pipeline for Channel Africa, and as such will also secure further savings and efficiencies. We have automated broadcasting on certain radio stations between midnight and the early morning hours, and this ensured that we reduced costs there significantly. Overtime and standby practices and the bad discipline around that in the past have been identified, and measures have been put in place to ensure that there's no repeat. The CEO referred to our property implementations, our property strategy that's being implemented. We performed the audit that we committed to 18 months ago, and we are in the process of optimizing and disposing of non-core assets. We have engaged with various partners, potential partners around alternative funding sources to reduce the burden on day-to-day operational resources. Our financial institution is working closely with us at this point in time, having gone through a number of steps already that should see initiatives to reduce the burden on our working capital management. Other funding options include everything from developmental funding institutions, the likes of PIC and DTI, etc., are also options that we will be pursuing in due course. Marketing activities were already significantly constrained 18 months ago. We further ensured that discipline is established in this respect in the form of cost containment note, an internal one that ensured that there would be no frivolous spend on activities, and all marketing activities is again subject to a return on investment being put in place, there being feedback reports to ensure that we know that the activity achieved what it was designed to be, and follow up on the actions at these engagements. We will be discontinuing an early settlement discount dispensation that was put in place to make cash available. That will be on the back of further engagements with our financial institution and will result in approximately another 100 million saving. There's been a lot said about legal fees, but I think it's important to say that as the CEO indicated, from the previous financial year to the current one, 31% reduction. We underspent our budget by 21%, and legal fees amounted to 26 million in the past financial year. The kind of things that were done is the skills and capacitation of the legal department. We do legal cost optimization to the extent that we even send bills for taxation. We have closed the gap around discipline with respect to staff advances, training and learning and development were further optimized to ensure that we only invest again where it is deemed desirable and in the context of a person's contribution to the organization. Travel has seen major savings in the course of the past 18 months, in the past financial year, as much as 50 million in fact, purely because of very rigorous negotiation with respect to accommodation and other travel service providers. There was also a cost containment note issued internally in this respect, and I do think the team have lived up to what was expected from them. We reported 18 months ago that we were going to implement a new PIBX and printing solutions. The printing solution one is in place. We have revisited our mobile communications policy and expect to see major cost efficiencies flowing from that. Energy savings and green initiatives continue to receive attention. And then the topic of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. These days are rigorously monitored and reported on. People are being held responsible, and as such, you see significant reduction in that as well. So with that as a background, our provisional financial year ending 31st of March 2020 results are very similar to the past financial year, as you can see. We do believe that we have picked all the low-hanging fruits at this point in time, and hence, and that on the back of our target, our turnaround strategy and the bailout, we now need to make the step changes that it is necessary to put the corporation on a new trajectory. In our corporate plan that we shared with yourselves recently, we also indicated what we anticipated the financial performance was going to be on the back of the strategy and the bailout, but we did flag the risks of non-adherence to both the bailout conditions and the inability to successfully implement our turnaround strategy. The realization of these risks would have jeopardized the financial sustainability and independence of this corporation. And then COVID hit our country and the globe, and the state of disaster was declared. As I sit here, we anticipate the impact of this to be a nearly 400% increase in our anticipated loss. Revenue is down by 30% or approximately 2 billion rand. Debtors' days are expected to increase. Creditors' days are expected to be at levels very near those pre the bailout at the end of this financial year. Revenue in the short term, to give you a sense, has been as much as 50% less than the target that was set for the months, and in the TV license case, even more. Now this, while expenditure is only down by approximately 14% or 1 billion rand, noting that we are conscious of more work to be done there. It is therefore important to note that if it was your home budget and your income was suddenly...
As we wrap up, I've given you 5 minutes more, almost done with that 5 minutes. So if you can work on winding up.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So based on the above, we believe it is clear that if something materially doesn't change, the organisation is likely to be faced with liquidity insolvency challenges and potentially again technical insolvency. I do need to speak to the ring-fence funds with the bailout that we do have. These were never anticipated for payroll or operational expenditure. It was designed for trade and other payables, content and capital investment. We have rigorously ensured that this funding is only used for these purposes, as we had one opportunity to reset the corporation from a financial perspective, change its course and give back to the taxpayers where the funding was effectively sourced from. Therefore, it's important from our perspective to ensure that it is invested where benefit realization and return on investment is clear. We have in the meantime implemented austerity measures with respect to both expenditure and cash management, but the one item that we do not want to touch, though, is our content, investment and marketing, because it attracts our audiences. As such, and I am wrapping up, Chairperson, having exhausted the immediate cost efficiencies in the course of the past 2 years, we can now no longer avoid having to deal with our biggest cost driver in the corporation if we want to turn around to financial sustainability. The COVID pandemic has just further emphasized this burning platform. The SABC wants to be financially independent, but we then have to do what is necessary to no longer depend on government financial support. As much as this task is a deeply painful task, and it is even more so in times that is very, very difficult for our country. In the words of our Minister of Finance this afternoon, or at least very similar words, we need to seek to position our compensation at levels that are appropriate, affordable and fair. And we can no longer afford to not confront this challenge head on. I will now hand over to the COO.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be speaking about the new target operating model, but I'm going to go very fast through it due to time constraints. But basically, just to tell you that the model is based on and embedded in the turnaround strategy, National Treasury's precondition, and certainly our strategic objective around human resources. I'm not going to go too much in what a target operating model is, but safe to say that our current business model and target operating model within the organization is not clearly defined and certainly not documented. I'm going to skip the slides and I'm going to go straight to slide 30. I just want to speak about the overall objectives of the target operating model. We've identified 8 over there. The first one speaks to revenue, and that is generating or finding new revenue generation models. I think it is critical to note that the next 7 objectives does not speak to revenue directly. So this is not a new liberalist model, but a robust, holistic operating model. The next 2 objectives speaks to content, and the first one is about developing or creating compelling content, leveraging local creativity. We will not compromise on our mandate and local content. That has been a cornerstone for the organization, and we will continue doing that while we look at reducing costs without negatively, adversely impacting artists. The third one is also about revenue, around content, and that is to expand the lifespan of the content. The next is about business models and platforms. I'm not going to go into much about that. The fifth one is around re-engineering our business processes. Then we have people, that is attracting and developing the right digital skills, both from a technology perspective, but also business. We also address culture. And lastly, we look at a fit-for-purpose structure. So I'm going to go straight into the operating model or the business model, that is. And the business model basically is our bridge to ensure that we are successful in executing our vision, mission, and strategic intent for the organization. You'll see that it is quite a holistic business model. We have quite a complex business. We deal with both a B2C type of business on the left-hand side, which is directly with the consumer out there, our audiences, but we also have a B2B business in terms of companies advertising with us, but also advertising agencies we work with. This is color-coded, and you will see that green is effective, amber is less effective, poor is very poor, or red is rather very poor, or we're not doing that. I'm going to skip this, but just to say that the big thing within a digital organization is around data analytics, and that is from a consumer, market, and competitive perspective. On the right-hand side is our, and I just want to deal with that, is basically our value drivers. The first 5 is existing value drivers within the organization. You'll see the first one, AFPs. We play in that both from a radio and a TV perspective. However, a very reactive model that we currently have, where we wait for a third party to come to us. They will pay us a certain percentage or amount for airtime, and they will generate the revenues for themselves. We are changing that around to make sure that future AFPs is mutually beneficial for both parties. The second one is leasing of our studios and outdoor broadcasting facilities. We've never seen that as a revenue stream before. We've waited once again for external parties to come to us. We are now creating that as such. The third one is basically content and rights sub-licensing. Our CEO spoke about us repricing and right pricing our content, basically, and that is now going to be a substantial revenue generation business for us going forward. TV license remains a bone of contention. We were not able to increase our television licenses for the last 5 years. We also have no recourse for the excessive default rate of almost 70%. Moreover, we have our competitors such as MultiChoice who would be using our content, sell their box at 110 Rand a month, and we have no recourse of ensuring that that audience base has paid their television license, nor can we get them to pay a levy for that. Advertising revenue remains our core business, but we haven't been very successful of that in the past. We've changed that around. We're reskilling our salespeople. We're changing the model around that. Our customers have been saying to us, we don't want you to sell airtime. We certainly don't want to be speaking to multiple people, one for radio, one for TV, and one for digital or any other business. We want to be speaking to one person, and we want value propositions across your channels, basically, across your platforms. The next 5 is new ones that we are going into, and this is definitely going to be the game changer for us, and that is subscriptions. Our license doesn't allow us to play in that space, but certainly with third parties we can. The next one is revenue share models. In the past, we've tried it, but the third party has always benefited more. We're definitely going to be exploiting that so that we can actually do a mutually beneficial model for both parties. Commission, that's just from our sales team, as well as extending that to non-sales frontline people. Carriage deals is what we are doing with other telcos basically, and partnerships around that. Pop-up and white label TVs and radio is to go out there and create that as a value proposition to say, don't compete with us around that. We have the expertise, we've got the infrastructure, let us do that for you and we can white label it. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And maybe just to
you only have a minute, sir. Please wind up. It's an hour now, almost.
Okay, Chair, I'll have 3 more minutes. I'll spend 1 minute on this slide and I'll move to the next. On this one, it's just basically an article that came out yesterday, mentioned that the overall advertising spend on digital platforms such as Google, Facebook, and the likes will actually exceed that of traditional platforms within this current financial year. And that has been expedited by COVID-19. The article concludes with the question, which is a key question: how will broadcasters stop the hemorrhaging? Fortunately, National Treasury has identified that proactively, and that is through partnerships. And so we will be aggressively pursuing partnerships with other SOEs as well as with private companies out there to turn the business around. I'm going to move straight onto our new target operating model. And in there, you will see on the left-hand side all our stakeholders. Once again, this is color-coded. The next column deals with all our value propositions. This model is not cast in stone. It is a dynamic model. So as and when we have new value propositions, this will change completely. This model drives all business decisions and certainly also how will be optimized to ensure that we achieve our objectives. I don't want to speak too much. Maybe I'll just spend time on the right-hand side. If you see there, PFMA is marked red. The only reason for that, absolutely nothing wrong with the Act, but for a revenue-generating SOE, it is extremely inhibiting and prevents us from competing adequately with our competitors. King 4, the only reason why that's amber is we haven't fully implemented that yet. On the right-hand side of that, you'll see products and services. You'll see sport, for example, red over there. And so the reason for that is we've run it as a channel in the past, and that's why the excessive costs that we incurred in ensuring rights. But in reality, it's actually a product. And so we're changing the business operating model around that. Chair, I'll probably then stand still here and then hand it back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. I think based on what the execs have presented, we have done everything that we're asked to do as the board. And really, my humble request is that, honorable members may differ with us with the decision that the board has taken when it's come to section 189. But we humbly request the portfolio committee to allow the CCMA facilitated process to unfold. We believe this is in the best interest of the SABC, and it will help SABC to stop being perpetually reliant on taxpayers' hard-earned money. I'll hand over to you, Chairperson. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair and your team, and I'm sure honourable members are ready to engage the presentation. I have confirmation now that even those that were kicked out by the system are now back, and all of you will have an opportunity to engage. I have seen that Honourable Faku has raised a hand to be noted as one. May I just check other hands from members?
My hand is up on the system, but I'll put it up physically too.
I'm looking at the system, Honourable Van Dam. Unfortunately, I don't see. I'm not sure whether the problem is with on my side, but Honourable Van Dam, you are noted. That's number 2. Another member, maybe just to indicate by giving the name on the basis that the system seems not to be helping us that much.
Honorable Lesiba.
Honorable Lesiba, number 3.
Honorable Majosi.
Majosi, number 4.
Mackenzie.
Honorable Mackenzie.
Honorable Kubega.
Honorable Kubega. Okay, I will take
Ndlozi.
Okay. All right. I've noted your hand, Honorable Lucy, also. All right. Honorable members, as I said, that's the time to engage the presentation. I will start with Honorable Faku. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to you, greetings to the Minister and Deputy Minister, greetings to honorable members and to the board. Chairperson, let us welcome the presentation from the SABC. First, let us appreciate the opening remarks from the Deputy Minister, especially on the issue of retrenchment. We appreciate your remarks, Deputy Minister, when you say that as the department you don't support retrenchments. And I also think that as the portfolio committee, it's important that we also support that view that the department has of not supporting retrenchment. Chair, I think one of the things, as I was listening to the presentation, the issue of the bailout that has been mentioned, I think as a portfolio committee, we are very clear for what the bailout was meant for. We are very clear when it comes to that the bailout was not only was not meant for staff compensation. So at that point that keeps on coming up, I think it's important.
Honorable Faku.
Chair, can you hear me?
Back now, yes, you can proceed.
Okay. I was saying that let us appreciate the opening remarks by the Deputy Minister, saying that as the department, they don't support the issue of retrenchment, and I think as a committee, we must also support that view. The second part here is the issue that keeps on popping out about the bailout. I think it's important that we fully explain ourselves to the SABC, that we understand that what the bailout was meant for. We understand it was not meant for staff compensation. Secondly, let us also appreciate as the SABC is trying to rethink and redesign the SABC. Maybe some of us we did not know that it will involve making the chapter.
Our mics except the one who's speaking, otherwise it does interfere with the meeting. Please, only the speaker who's now on the floor. If you can just all our mics. Thank you.
Chairperson, as the SABC is trying to rethink and redesign the SABC, it has never crossed my mind that about 600 people will be retrenched. It has never come to my mind that we'll be sitting in this situation today that we have about 600 people that will be retrenched. It's kind of disturbing. As a portfolio committee, when we requested that the SABC come with a strategy, that they are trying to redesign the SABC, and we were told that this information is confidential. Perhaps if we knew that part of that strategy was retrenchment, as the committee, I don't think we would have agreed to that. I've got a few questions, Chairperson. On the turnaround on staff optimization, what does this entail? If the SABC can take us through that. Can you take us into context of your planned retrenchment? Bearing in mind that as the SABC, you are still hiring people. Your operating model, please take us through that because it's not clear to me. On the COVID response, can the SABC tell us why were the broadcasting of the ministers' briefing not charged? Why was the SABC not charging them? Based on the skills audit conducted, how many employees will be retrained, redeployed, and retrenched? And what criteria is used to determine employees to be retrenched or chairperson? I think on this issue of revenue, you know, the SABC is coming with the last thing according to where I'm sitting. We are talking about retrenchments, but in terms of how you're supposed to generate your revenue, you are not emphasizing too much on that. Your revenue still, you are still focusing on advertising. That is where your revenue is coming from. I hear that the CEO is also talking about content or review of sale policies and that. But we are not giving us how will that make sure that your revenue increases in the near future. And also, Chairperson, the written submission to the department on the digital migration policy for it to be reviewed. Can we be taken through to that? Because I hear that the SABC is on the request to the department. I'll stop there for now, Chairperson, and come back with other questions. Thank you.
Honorable Faku, thank you. Honorable Van Dam.
Thanks, Chair. Let me preface my questions with this. Look, we understand that the current management, the current board, inherited an organization basically at ground zero. And you've had to rebuild it. And now you are faced with COVID-19. Many companies are having to decrease their spending. And I can understand that maybe advertising would be one of those areas where spending is decreased. So the screen is frozen. Can you hear me?
You are loud and clear, Honorable Van Dam.
Oh, sorry. My screen is frozen. Anyway, so what I was saying is we understand where you are. It's a very difficult position that you're in. We understand that your losses have been projected to be, is it 2 billion that you've said? And also, when we last met with you, we said that go back and you better not come back to us at the end of the year with your cap in hand asking for more money. Now, that is a very, very difficult ask that we've have of you, but unfortunately, this is the way the cookie crumbles, and you were hired to make sure that you fix this organization. We are faced with unprecedented times, and you have to do what you have to do so that at the end of the year, you do not get another bailout, because that bailout must be opposed. That being said, I also understand that as part of the conditions that you were giving the money by Treasury, you had to restructure the SABC. And I also appreciate the SABC staff is bloated. There were salaries are bloated during the previous dispensation, the previous corrupt dispensation of Hlaudi Motsoeneng. A lot of people were hired, middle management was bloated. I appreciate all of that. And also that last year, when you first told us about possible retrenchments, we said, go back, do a skills and salary audit, and then come back. Because we were of the opinion that you can't just decide we're going to cut people here, there, and there. You know, we have to go through the process. Now, I was under the impression that that process was complete. But I am hearing now that a second phase still needs to be undertaken from the GCO. So I don't understand how, if that process is not complete, you have now decided you're changing on what basis? Finish the skills audits, come and present it to us. Honorable Faku is correct. You need to come to us and say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that section is bloated, that section is bloated, we need to cut here, we need to hire here. I understand there's also vacancies that needed to be filled. So you can't be talking about staff retrenchments when you have not finished the skills audit. We also have a letter that was sent to us from the SABC editorial staff, and it is very, very concerning. Now, I think as members of this committee, we must not confuse ourselves as a union. We're not a union. So there's work that the union, which represents staff, must do with the SABC, and we should allow the process to take place. And I agree with the chairperson that we must give space to that process. Fair. But our role is to make sure, as public representatives, because we're not here for our political parties, we're here first and foremost as public representatives, and we need to be sure that the process is one that is fair. So that letter, I don't know if you've seen it, SABC management, but there's concerns here that staff were not consulted. They were not given feedback about the audit. So I am very, very, very sorry. But you need to go back. You need to finish your audit. You need to respond to the staff. You need to take them with you along the process. You must not be populist here, because there are a lot of competing interests. One, in SABC, they must be able to self-sustain, and two, staff members. So can I request that when you deal with this process, you deal with it with dignity, you deal with it aware of the anxiety. These are people who are worried about losing their jobs. I'm worried too. And there's the added anxiety of the economic downturn. So where are these people going to get their jobs? So can I request that this process be undertaken very, very carefully? You be very, very sure about why you're retrenching at different sectors, at different divisions of the SABC. So far, what I'm seeing, it's quite simply not good enough. It's not good enough. And then, so that we don't apportion all the blame to the SABC, there's this issue of the unfunded mandates, which the SABC has for years and years and years complained about, that the unfunded mandate is often broadcasting events of national importance, such as rallies of political parties, addresses by the president. So we need to, as the committee, carefully sit down and decide how it is this unfunded mandate is going to be funded. Because it's not fair that the SABC, when they make a loss, then we are very angry with them. But then they say to us, give us money for this unfunded mandate, which is in essence covering the work that we do. So that is a serious discussion that needs to happen. So to summarize my points, you cannot go ahead with the retrenchments until you finish the audit. You must properly consult. You need to deal with this process very carefully. You're dealing with people's lives. You're dealing with their jobs. You're dealing with a very difficult and anxious time for many people. And for us, we need to talk about the unfunded mandate. And I must say thank you for the work that you've done thus far. I am not going to minimize the momentous task that you've had, and that the work that you have done to bring us thus far. It is far better than we've had to deal with for many, many years. So we can't discount the work that you're doing. But that's being said, just those concerns, please. Find creative ways so you don't come back for a bailout, fix the retrenchments process, and we will talk about the unfunded mandate. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Van Dam. I will now call Honorable Molala. Honorable Madisha, is your hand up? Oh yeah, now I can see you now. Honorable Molala.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Greetings to everybody else, the Minister, the Deputy, and all protocol observed. Chairperson, I'm going to premise my presentation firstly that we should stop comparing what happened in the past with what is happening now. Because the reason we Parliament appointed the new board was actually to do better than those that were there before. But I wanted also to start with the bailout, because when SABC came to us and requested our assistance with regard to bailout, the request was specifically around turning around the SABC. Now, the sentiment I'm getting now is that the request for another bailout is just on the cards. After SABC has presented, my sense is that we are about to be asked for another bailout. It's not yet out, but I can sense it. Now, all this good presentation that you have done, most of them, in my view, are issues that have been there in the SABC even before the bailout. For instance, the signal distribution has always been there as a challenge, even before the bailout. Governance challenges. I think in our last meeting, we clearly requested, particularly on the bailout money, we specifically requested that a breakdown be done so that we are clear that so much, because it doesn't help to pursue a fight against people and you lose more money and then you come back and say, no, but we don't have money. We should balance correcting the situation. Yes, it's what we all agreed it should happen. But if correcting the situation means you spend more money on unnecessary legal battles and then come back and say, no, we don't have money, it's something else. But I don't get a sense that the breakdown has been presented as we requested it. Now, the other issue that is also not clearly presented, our initial discussion on the turnaround strategy, there was an area where you said you can't comment, you can't say anything because of fear of your competitors, the commercial part of SABC. Now, even now, after the bailout, we're not getting any sense that that secretive commercial part has done something good or has contributed a certain percentage in terms of your revenue. So it remains a secret whether it has contributed or it has not contributed. So I don't know how we are going to address this, because we agreed that for fear of information leaking, blah, blah, it's commercial reasons and so on. But now when you are in trouble, you're not also telling us what this commercial part has done, not in details, but just indicating that the commercial part has contributed a certain percentage in terms of all we hear is the complaint about the unfunded mandate, which is 3%. But we are not told about the other side and their contribution. And maybe the last important point, I think, on the Section 189 issue, I think Honorable Van Dam is right. We are not a union, but we are also public representatives. So those people who are in unions and who are in political organizations, all of them constitute the public. Now, if Section 189 has not followed all the processes that were outlined in the bailout condition, you simply have to go back, as Honorable Van Dam says, go back and do what you're supposed to do. Finish the skills audit, all these phases that you are saying. I don't know why it takes you almost more than, because this is not the first time that you are raising this issue of Section 19. Even before the bailout, this issue was on the table. Early last year. Now, we are 7 months later. You still have not completed. The other area that you need to also clarify, in as much as you have the intention to apply Section 189 of the Labor Relations Act, also indicate to us the new entrances that you require in terms of your turnaround strategy or a new appointment, so that we know, because it doesn't make sense that you retrench people, but you employ more people who are going to spend more than what you have retrenched. So, and you come back and say, no, there's no money. So that also is needed so that we get clarity on that one. And then maybe also congratulate you on the sports rights acquisition. In terms of your presentation, you've done well. And we must give credit where this credit is needed. And then on the issue of COVID-19, I don't know, because both the president and the Minister of Finance have been saying they are offering some help, but I did not hear you saying, facing this situation, you've made attempt to have some of those grants directed to the SABC. I don't hear you saying anything about that, because companies are getting some relief, their employees. Even in your case, I don't hear you saying, yes, even in our case, we've applied for our employees to get 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe also that one, if you can clarify it, I think I'll be fine. And then lastly, there was an issue in the last meeting where you said by the last meeting, your projection was that by end of this financial year, 2020-21, you will have exhausted 1.5 billion of the bailout. Now, in today's presentation, I don't hear you talking about it, because we debated it last time. I thought today it will come more clearer, because you said it's over a financial year. Somebody said by the time, and then you said the CEO came back and said, no, it's over a period of 12 months. Now, if that also can be cleared. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Majosi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, let me greet the honorable members, the board of the SABC, and the minister and the deputy minister. And maybe let me appreciate also the report that we have received now from the SABC, and to say that I don't envy them, because at this present moment I know how it feels when you are in a board and you are having a turnaround strategy, and you happen to have an organizational restructuring and skills audit, and also it will also implicate you into the retrenchments. Nonetheless, Chairperson, maybe to say that thank you to the SABC for all the hard work that they've put through. I think I will agree with Honorable Van Dam in a sense that you have inherited an entity that has been destabilized to not to be able to sustain itself, not to be able to be independent in its own, so that it can make its own decisions. That is the unfortunate part. But nonetheless, Chairperson, what I would like to know, mine would be quick. I heard when there was a presentation that they spoke about the public protectors. I'm not sure if they will be able to tell us what steps have you taken with regards to the public protector's report, since you spoke about it, but you did not get into the details of it. I'm not sure if maybe you'll be able to share it with us now, and also to maybe give us a clarity in terms of the retrenchments. Where are you looking at retrenching? Who is going to be affected? Is it the middle lane, or the general workers, or is it the top part? And how did you arrive at that?
That's someone.
And also, Chairperson, also to put us at ease, maybe as the committee, specifically speaking for myself, put me at ease that if it comes to a point where you finish your skills audit, you finish everything, and then you are you won't come back to us. Maybe you are expected to retrench. You will not come back to us and ask for a bailout for certain other things. We know this one was not for salaries. And as much as you have said that in each and every R1 you make, it's 40 cents that you spend on salaries, of which that is way beyond the threshold. And I wouldn't want you to even kill yourself even more to say then you are keeping people that maybe you do not need, maybe the skills that they have, it's not needed in the SABC. But if you can give us that clarity, is there any possibility that you will come back to us for another bailout? And in terms of this COVID-19, can you please explain on the 1 billion government? I'm not sure whether it's a 1 billion government awareness fund that it's there, or whatever phase they use it. But how much has SABC received from it? Since we are SABC is the only one that is actually, even if it's not the only media news, but we are providing space, we are providing the time to make sure that we get all the necessary news that we need. How much did you receive from the 1 billion, if we can get from that? And then if we can get those clarities, Chairperson, and then after that, then we'll be able to maybe say what is it that we expect from the SABC. In terms of the salaries, I would not even enter into that. Some of the people know that when there are times when an entity needs to take tough decisions, unfortunately, it implicates people's lives. That is why we must make sure that we take string measures to make sure that we don't tamper with those that are vulnerable, are more vulnerable than others. So if we can get that, Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening. Good evening, Minister and colleagues. Thank you to the SABC for the presentation. It was very informative, and it seems as if you're on track in terms of your turnaround plan. Certainly, I think it was Ms. van Biljon spoke quite in intensive detail about the successes that you've had. Your CEO spoke about the cost reduction in the sports rights. I think it was Honourable Malala that covered this as well. I would just like to just comment on this. It was a massive reduction from literally from billions to millions that we were talking about. And I watched Donald Trump talk about his acquisition of Air Force One or 2 Boeing planes, and how he went to Boeing and they said it was $5 billion. He said, no, I want to see a 3. And then they came back and they said it's 4.5. He said, no, I want to start with a 3. And eventually he got it down to a 3. What did you do, firstly, to get these cost reductions down, these sports rights fees down? What did you do? Because it was a dramatic reduction. So were we overpaying substantially in the beginning, and who was responsible for that? And what did you do to bring those rights down? Because I think that's a tremendous achievement, and it really needs to be applauded and celebrated, because that was one of the biggest cost constraints, I believe, on the SABC, as well as an hindrance to you attracting new viewers and retaining your existing base. So I really think that's very significant. Then in terms of partnerships going forward, do you do a lot of work with our community broadcasters? And the notion of decentralized public broadcasting, do you practice that or enter into any of those kind of arrangements with community broadcasters? I also looked at you leasing your facilities and your OB units and that sort of thing, especially in the era of a move from analog to digital. I would imagine that a lot of our community radio stations would be very keen to enter into this kind of partnership with the SABC. Are you actively engaging that sector? Because certainly I'm sure they could do with the assistance. Then in terms of your unfunded mandate, and please excuse me if this question has been asked 100 times by 100 different public representatives. I am new to the committee and the SABC, so I would just like an answer. I know about the unfunded mandate regarding the South African Post Office and the difficulties they face in trying to protect their reserved space. And correct me if I'm wrong, your unfunded mandate, part of your public mandate would be funded by TV licenses. I presume that was the intention behind this. What sort of percentage of your revenue are you getting from TV licenses? And are you seeing this declining? Because it shouldn't. I mean, clearly it should be increasing. And if the government is rolling out through USASA another 100,000 TV sets, well, that's 100,000 licenses you guys should be getting. So if you could just give me some insight into that. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, SABC.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie. Honorable Kubeka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Also, let me join the queue by greeting from the Deputy Minister, the Minister, my colleagues, and also the members of the SABC board, as also the officials of SABC as they are here. Chairperson, firstly, I would like just to know from the side of the SABC to say in this discussion on the issue of this retrenchment, was there any discussion with the shareholder? As I can hear also the issue of the National Treasury, it seems as if there was some engagement, mostly monthly, and the GTEC. So I would like to know the side of the shareholder, what was the position on the side of the shareholder when they were trying to present this issue of the retrenchment. But I can safely say I heard the Deputy Minister saying they are not fully support the issue of the retrenchment, Chairperson. So you can understand when we are talking about 600, what is the feel, the pinch actually to that huge number that we are talking about. So I would like just to tell the SABC to say we are grateful, understand when we are doing the issue of turnaround strategy. There are things that you are considered. But also as the committee, we will never be the stumbling block. When you are doing your thing, as you have raised to say, under the side of the governance, you try to focus on the issue of those SIU cases, the public protector, remedial, as they have presented to say you need to take care on those things. We fully support with whatever you are doing, but indeed, based on the issue of the retrenchment, my chairperson, I would like to say to the SABC, at this moment, with also the Deputy Minister to say we cannot support the issue of retrenching such a huge amount for the sake of saying now, as we are saying, you are doing a turnaround strategy. And the SABC, I would like to say to you, at no stage where the committee would like to see the SABC collapsed. Because I can hear that to say safely so, we need just to take a caution to say you don't want to see the SABC being collapsed just like any other SOEs. Even us, that is why we are giving you a support to work with whatever that you wanted to see, because now we said, yeah, we managed to have men and women who would have brains in order that they can bring the turnaround strategy in this, a board or entity that they are, but safely so. With us as the committee, we are fully supporting to say, let's work as a collective, but not to say it will be just as easy as ABC to say you'll retrench that 600 that we are talking about. And also on the side of following all the processes, is it the last one, this one, as we are still talking about the issue of the skill audit, as other members they have presented. Let's work this thing with a dignity, because now here we are dealing with the lives of the people, and it's not only these people that we are talking about, because immediately when we talk about this 600, those 600 also, they are having another train that they are hanging after them. So let's try to support to do another, or we find another way around in order that we can attend this matter. Not in J. Sivume bomama na bomba ukuthi 600 must just because it's the issue of the turnaround strategy. I think I will come on the second round, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. Honorable Dr. Ndlozi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm unable to appear on video, as you all know, and I apologize in advance for that. But I want to check, Honorable Chairperson, if I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible, Honorable Dr. Ndlozi.
Thank you. I think that it will be very short-sighted of us not to locate the entire strategic recovery of the SABC in a historic problem of running the public broadcaster. On one hand, with the constantly changing technologies of broadcasting, and on the other, the significant problems that the SABC experienced in relation to the introduction of pay television. And it being forced over years to provide free content, not only free content to MultiChoice on one hand, but also as a result to give MultiChoice its audiences. This is a fundamental scandal of the broadcasting history with which the SABC has to do its business. And this is important because you are unable to sustainably run SABC as a business without addressing this scandal. And so in relation to this, I do think that the minister in particular, being a member of cabinet, I understand that the SABC has been given to the deputy minister. At times I wonder of its strategic importance. It should be so important that it sits with the person who sits directly in the cabinet. We've got to correct this injustice, because even if we do not want to recover those costs, a deal must be made that allows the SABC not to give MultiChoice free content. And such a deal, we have suggested this, Honorable Minister, before on countless occasions. There must be a form of a law or a regulation that forces multi-choice to inculcate in its subscriptions the SABC TV license. That's the least they can do, that multi-choice, to address what is a fundamental historic injustice, that as soon as the public broadcaster fell in the hands of the democratic government, it was sabotaged by what essentially became a monopoly, which is white-owned, by the way. It was fundamentally, in terms of any principles that the government of the day represent, it was a fundamental injustice. And that's the first sabotage that we've got to correct. And therefore, I really would like to direct the first question to the minister. What are we doing about that? Shouldn't the subscription, I mean, to this day, the SABC is giving it's giving free content to multi-choice by law. It can't be. Let us at least pass a law. Let's at least pass the law, some regulation that says, taking this historic injustice on one hand, on the other, moving forward, you want this content on the basis of free to air. By the way, nobody in South Africa, if you're not paying TV license, you are doing something illegal. So are the subscriptions. So are the subscribers of DSTV. So that TV license ought to be inculcated. And if it were to tomorrow, SABC would get a significant revenue. I'm very impressed with the presentations that have been made. Honorable members have covered me in relation to sporting rights. And it seems to me that there are other costs that have been reduced, which they are not getting into. And I think that we've got to give a serious applause to that effect. The second form of sabotage that I find here, which is outside the power of the SABC, Honorable Minister, regards to government advertising. You know, in the Treasury budget at the moment, for instance, in relation only to COVID-19, you've got about 1 billion allocated to Treasury in relation to communication on COVID-19. You know, nothing has come to the SABC. Nothing. I mean, so you see, government is at the forefront of sabotaging the SABC. As a matter of fact, if you take, Minister, the entire government spending on advertising as a whole, you're going to discover that less than 30% of government spending on the broadcasting sector goes to the SABC. Yet the SABC has the greatest audiences by any account, whether it be radio, whether it be television, including its online programs, particularly in relation to news. How is it that your government does not pay the SABC, or if it doesn't pay the SABC for coverage of all these activities that we are being told, at least spend your advertisement on broadcasting. Make sure that 70% of your budget goes to the SABC. That's how many audiences they hold in the broadcasting sector in relation to everyone else. So I think that's the second sabotage the minister ought to clarify in this meeting. Why is the advertisement expenditure of government? That's why I'm prioritizing my questions to the person who sits in cabinet, because everybody else in cabinet has to answer this significant question. But indeed, we are the ones that are killing the public broadcaster. Beyond the problems that they are seized with, which I think they have constantly proved to be dealing with them as competently as possible. But there are these obligations on our part as the executive, and we are not meeting that obligation. So the entire TV license regime, Honorable Chairperson, has to be transformed in favor of the public broadcaster and the audiences they've sustained, regardless of the sabotage of multi-choice and other pay television markets, which are growing in relation to OTTs and all of that. So that for me is an important question that we really would like to hear. What are you doing to assist the SABC in its recovery strategy? We've got to hear of those battles. And then the other question, Honorable Chairperson, relates to online broadcasting. I think we must give the SABC a chance. This is the future. You know, the scariest thing that is happening in broadcasting now, I don't know if anybody has studied this question, relates to the deal that MultiChoice is making or has made with Netflix and Amazon. I can tell you for free. I can tell you for free, because they've projected, they've seen that the future of broadcasting is moving completely online. And the strength of the SABC in relation to those programs, that is Netflix as well as Showmax, is its capacity for live coverage, one in relation to sports and the other in relation to news in its diversity. So the capacity to carry live programs. So you guys in the SABC have to take us on board if there are indeed plans in relation to strengthening this future, and it's growing at a much faster rate than we realize. That's where majority of the investment has to go. Majority of the investment has to go to playing in the space of online broadcasting. If you're not playing there, I think you're going to be left behind. The last two points, it's this DTT, DTH question. Honorable Minister, I'm back with you now. You'll forgive me, I apologize in advance, because last night I didn't hear, because we were with ICASA, you see, and I don't think I heard, because I was in and offline. Tonight I'm around, I will hear you. Are you going to change the law to allow the SABC to play in the DTH space? Why not? Broadcasting has changed. If they were to do that, they're going to get a lot of revenue tomorrow. Everybody knows that. They're going to get a lot of revenue tomorrow. And they will give those Mzansi Magics and Mnet a run for their money. As it is, they are the largest on their platform. We have given 20 years to MultiChoice to become a powerhouse. Why are we still protecting it? There's no prospect anytime, anywhere that there's going to be a new player. Everybody is playing online. Why shouldn't the SABC participate in the direct-to-home space, particularly for a market at a lower level? I think that it's important to hear, and coupled with that, it's the spectrum auctioning. How much are you going to give the SABC in that spectrum? Because that spectrum, most of it anyway, I did engage in this. These are the two questions, and I apologize if you dealt with them. I don't want to be I don't want you to be repetitive, but I do think that they are here today. Let them hear you articulate in our presence. What is your response to these two questions? SABC should get something out of that money of spectrum, maybe 20%. I mean, and if you are really passionate about it, 30%. Why not? So what is it? What is the thinking? And personally, that is our proposal, that they should get something from the spectrum auctioning and the spectrum selling that is taking place. Finally, Chairperson, is directed to the COO and the CEO. I'm with the rest of the honorable members on the question of workers and worker retrenchments and all of that. But I think all these things have to be looked at in a broader context, that at the same time as we ask you not to retrench and to be human and all those things, we've got to ask the executive. With the executive alone, I'm sure your revenues, even in the time of COVID-19, nobody is doing better than you with COVID-19, because when it comes to African languages, when it comes to both television-wise and radio-wise, nobody beats you. There's no better communicator in the broadcasting sector to change people's behavior in relation to COVID-19 than SABC. You should be spending 70% of that budget. And if you say you are, the SABC must confirm today that they've received those proceeds from what Treasury has budgeted in relation to COVID-19 communication. The final question relates to that question with the SABC, and I want you to be very, very open with us. What happened to the idea that SABC sabotaged Ramaphosa's address? What was the report? What is the investigation led you to? Did you investigate? If you did you find that indeed there was a sabotage? Because the employment of the concept sabotage is tantamount to treason, by the way. If there was no sabotage, you've got to come out into the public and tell the South African public and retract your statements that there was a sabotage of Ramaphosa. And I say this because the importance of the integrity of the newsroom in the SABC is important. The protection of that integrity is important. What happened? Did you do an investigation? Did it arrive at the conclusion that there was a sabotage? If it did not, shouldn't you be taking the whole country into confidence, since you told them in the first place that there was a sabotage? Honorable Chairperson, in final, I think that
Thank you, Honorable.
I think we must support this team every possible way we can. They are on the right track, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ndlozi. Honorable Willie Madisha. Honorable Madisha, unmute your mic and speak. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
You are clear. You can proceed. Yes. Unmute your mic again and then proceed.
Okay.
Yes. Proceed.
No, thanks, Chair and everyone. My opening statement, Honorable Chairperson, is that workers at SABC must not be retrenched. You can't talk about this poor 600 people and say that they must join the more than 15 million people who are there in the country who are not working. We truly must not agree with that. And I must say that, albeit one has always agreed with and moved with what the board of the SABC and the management have raised, I'm very angry to hear this kind of thing. Now, secondly, what has been raised, Chairperson, is not new. All the cited momentous challenges they say they face were raised many times before in our meetings. It was as a sequel to that some of the understood problems. We as members, some of us of course said the initial amount that they requested, it was about 6 billion rand, plus minus. We said that they must be supported so that they could get that. But I know that due to the Treasury not agreeing, etc., we ended up coming to that amount of 3.2 billion. And we went on and said that they must be given that. And of course, you all know that it was not given to them at once. It was 2 point something that was given, and then thereafter another 1 point whatever. And that was not enough, but then it was given to them. And what further disappoints me is that in one of the meetings, they came and indicated that there was a progress. And what I want to put to them is, why did they not tell us the truth? Because they said we're progressing, there are lesser problems now. What we got from government, that 3+ million rand, rather a billion, was actually taking us forward. Now, I'm very disappointed to hear when they say that they must just kick out people because what they said before, that they were succeeding and so on, is a quintessential kind of position that they basically are putting to us today. So I'm saying, insofar as that is concerned, I'm very disappointed and say that if that is indeed what they believe has got to be done, then they must forget, and the people of South Africa must be very angry that they are doing this kind of thing. Yes, I understand that there were problems that have come as a result of COVID and so on, which then led to the reduction of adverts. The mismanagement of funds is a problem by management. I'm not talking about the present management. I'm talking about the previous management. We understand that. But something must actually be done. I'm therefore saying to them that they must go back and do the work properly. And tell us the truth next time when they come here. You see, SABC is an SOE. It employs, although some amongst us may not agree with me, the workers that are there are civil servants. They are civil servants, very important, just like health workers, educators, security, and all the other workers in the civil service. They may be doing other, rather, they may be doing their work at a particular level, but then they are civil servants, and they therefore cannot just be kicked out like that. We must really make sure that they are protected. And if the management is not doing its work properly, I am saying that they must go and do their work properly and not lie when they come to us. I emphasize they must not lie, because in the other meeting, not one meeting, but a number of them, they said that they were succeeding, things were being improved, etc., etc. Now, that is absolutely wrong. We can't allow that. I agree with the Honorable Ndlozi that the public broadcaster has more listenership and viewership in the country today. Now, are we wrong as SABC management to put it to you like that? If we are correct, why are you unable to grow but can only think about retrenching people? What is your program of action? Re-getting money from those who stole it. Are you succeeding? Are you doing anything at all? You must be telling us about that. That's why I'm saying I'm very angry, because in the past we said to you, go and look into this. You said, hallelujah, we're going to deal with that. You said to us that the kind of problems that you faced were being dealt with, and you were succeeding after you got the 3+ billion rand. And you'll remember that some of us had supported you when you said 6+ billion. But now you are coming back to say people must just be kicked out and go and join the 6, rather the 15 million people who are not working in the country. You've got to go back and work and then come back and say to us, this is the kind of program that you have come up with, and this is how we're going to improve the lives of the people who are working there and who have families to feed, really. Chairperson, we can't agree with this. Let's tell the SABC, that management, they must go back and come up with a proper position and come back and tell us so that we can have a proper discussion. And I'll beg you, Minister, as well, because you sit there with them, go and make sure that proper things are done. Otherwise, we can't go anywhere with this kind of thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Madisha. I think in this first round of questions, we'll then afford both the department and the SABC to respond on those that they would want to respond on as asked by members. Of course, taking into account also comments that would have been made. I know it's 4 minutes past 8, and I'm sure there are still other questions that may follow. So if we can get straight to answers in terms of questions that would have been asked. I will be guided again, Honorable Minister, whether you'd want to come right at the end or you would want to start as the first, like it would have been the case before. Otherwise, out to the SABC. Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. As I indicated earlier, the Deputy Minister is the political principal dealing with SABC. She will be responding to the questions. Just to clarify one thing that Honorable Ndlozi raised, Chairperson, in terms of SABC not being under the minister, I guess he assumes that therefore it doesn't get the attention that it's get. I don't know what does that mean. Was the deputy minister of the department, and therefore whatever work that she does there, she submits reports and recommendations, and then those find expression if needs be to go to cabinet. I will allow the DM to respond as the political principal that provides oversight.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Hello.
Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks to the Minister. I think, Chair, we should move from a premise that speaks about the role of the SABC and its public interest and mandate that it has to carry as an SOE of government. And we should also say the SABC is not unique to all the challenges that other SOEs are confronted with, and this was since 2018, after all those issues that they went through. The issue of the bailout came to the table. And like all other SOEs, proper recapitalization of SOEs, including the SABC, has been a challenge. Now, speaking of the bailout and its conditions, it's something that the SABC board and its executive were seized with, and they were able to deal with that. It's a pity that when the CFO presented, it was only one slide that was flighted, but it was also going to be important just to see how far has the SABC dealt with all the debts and all the other challenges that confronts it. The most important thing, Chair, on the bailout is the Sadc signal distribution issue, which took over more than R500 million, something that is top on the agenda.
Chairperson, I think there's a bad connection. We can't hear anything.
From my
As we
side. Can you hear me?
Can you?
Hello.
Because we can hear from our side.
It's clear.
All right. You can proceed.
Is it clear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Chair. The biggest challenge on the cost drivers of the SABC, like I was saying, is the Sadc signal distribution. Of course, it has been the personnel expenditure, the legal expenses, and many other things that the SABC was dealing with. And those we have been able to deal with. Now, critical or central to some of these things is the mass carry issue, the issue that Honorable Ndlozi is talking about. So we took the Sadc issue back to ICASA to say, ICASA, can you intervene as the regulator and look at whether, from the signal point of view, is the SABC paying what is due to them, or are they overcharged, or what needs to be done? Bearing in mind, by the way, that Centec, it's a baby of the SABC, and we know how the two were separated. The second issue is the mass carry issue, which we said to ICASA, we have to review this regulation because there's no way that everybody can view the SABC through pay TV. And if our people are unable to pay, they are now, the TV becomes dark and they cannot be able to watch even SABC. So it's something that ICASA is seized with on the SABC side. The third issue was the issue of the sports rights, which the CEO spoke to, but it is still an issue that ICASA is dealing with. It's only that our regulator, because of the spectrum issues and other things, probably they are overwhelmed. But those are the things that are central to the programs of ICASA to make sure that they are able to bring back some of the reports so that through the regulatory framework, we review some of these things and we claim what is ours as the SABC and then be able to deal with some of those things. The issue of the unfunded mandate of the funerals and the public announcement, these are some of the things that we are carrying the SABC through to, and the acting minister acting minister Jackson Mthembu, because we had to sit with him during the COVID-19 peak hour when the SABC was in serious distress. Even now there still are, because we said to the minister, the SABC had to reschedule its own programs because of the public announcements that either the Command Council has to do or the President has to do. And for now, we need an intervention of 140 million rand. And we're still waiting for that money. And last week, the SABC and our officials went further to Treasury to say there's even a revenue gap that we are facing because of some of the shifting and changing of our schedules that impacts on the revenue of the SABC, and that is totaling about 1.5 billion rand. So all those engagements, the shareholder through its officials and the SABC are constantly sitting with Treasury. And it's true, the SABC got zero in as far as advertising now from the COVID-19 issues are concerned. So it's some of those things and work in progress that we are engaged in National Treasury, and we expecting them to now come on board because it is bleeding, and we have put all those things accordingly to say, can we then do some of the interventions that are required so that the SABC, the COVID-19 does not bring unintended consequences to the SABC. Of course, there are two opportunities that we also said to the SABC. Explore these opportunities. The education channel, because most learners and even your relationship with the Department of Education will assist you to leverage on that and be able to get some money partnering with the Department of Education on virtual classroom. And it's very disappointing that up to now that has not happened because the Department of Education, I was told yesterday, they were saying the SABC is charging them commercial costs than them relating with the department in a government relationship. So it's something that we have to intervene on. The second issue is the health channel. We have to look at whether some of the things, if the SABC create a health channel and they create a partnership with the Department of Health, some of the COVID-19 engagement and pronouncements can be migrated to the health channel so that they can continue to schedule some of the programs that they have while they are able to leverage on some of these things with the Department of Health, because they too have content that they can flight and they can be able to pay accordingly on the SABC and then be able to derive revenue out of that. So those are some of the things. The other thing that I think going forward, especially on the revenue stream that the SABC was able to deal with, there's something that the group CEO always brag about, the amount that View partnership, the 100 million per annum amount that the SABC and View are able to bring. So those are the initiatives that are assisting them to now create some more revenue streams and all other related things. So I'm just saying, these are some of the things that once they are able to share with the committee on the financial position of the SABC with regard to savings, with regard to partnerships, with regard to disposal of assets, but also importantly, what Honorable Molala spoke to, what is the contribution of the commercial aspect of the SABC? Because that too, we also have to share with the committee and then be able to say, at least these are the other areas where we are able to see progress, and then show the challenges that TV licensing still give us and how can we then deal with that, mindful of the contribution that members of the portfolio committee have just said. Yeah, there are a few things about cutting on FET, the legal fees. Is it still advisable for the SABC to pursue certain cases if people have won those cases, that you continue to appeal and all these things? If it's not worth it, why still pursue those kind of things? So those are some of the things that, as the shareholder, we talk to and we deal with them accordingly. So those are some of the things that we believe, if they are attended to by the SABC, they'll also be one of the things which we are committing from the shareholder side is to go and sit with Treasury on the current interventions that we want, or the unintended consequences that COVID-19 has brought, especially on the scheduling and all other things, but also on the conditionality of the bailout that speaks to the cutting of personnel costs. We believe they're putting the SABC on an X on their neck by putting that as a condition, and we have to go and renegotiate that aspect, because we are aware currently that most private sector companies are going to shed lots of jobs, and government and its entities cannot be seen to be doing that. We know what black tax mean to most of the families and people who are affected, and this is what members are saying. And there's no way that we can agree to retrenchments. And we are agreeing with members to say, continue with the skills audit, see how you retrain, upskill, reskill other employees, and then be able to deal with some of those things. And yeah, I think, well, part of it as we meet with the Treasury, it's about the technological advancement that is in the broadcasting sector, and this is one of the things that will also make us to motivate Treasury to say there are some of the things that also puts the SABC on a back foot, and these are the realities that confront the SABC, and how do we look at these things, and how do we make sure that at least in some of the revenue gap that the SABC is confronted with, Treasury is able to come on board and mitigate on some of those things and deal with the revenue gap that has been identified accordingly, and then be able to deal with some of these things. So, Chair, I think as the department, one of the things that we really have to speed up, as I conclude, on the DTT, is for us to make sure that the market out there makes the aerials and other things available so that our people can migrate, because not everybody can afford pay TV. It's no longer indigent people. All of us are affected by pay TV. We have to make sure that at least out there in the market, people are able to buy these things. And that will even create an opportunity for the SABC to have more platforms, and then make sure that they are able to become innovative and then be able to deal with some of these things. I hear what Honorable Ndlosi is saying about the spectrum and how much will the SABC get. If members want to propose to the Minister of Finance to say, because the digital migration process, once people migrate, SABC will make the spectrum available. How much will they get, and what is it that will make sure that the SABC get out of that? It's a proposal that the committee can make, and then speak also to the shareholder. Minister is on top of the situation of the spectrum allocation, and then let's see if Treasury is able to take up that matter and see if they can make the SABC to benefit out of that. Yeah, I think, Chair, I tried on my best on some of these things, unless if I left other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. You've covered, I think, a lot of ground in terms of the time we have. I will now give to the SABC, and I'm sure guided by the chair again of the board, on how they have filtered answering to the questions. But may I also make this request once again, that for those that would be speaking, those are the ones who must switch their cameras on and their mics on. Those who are not speaking, please make sure that your camera is off. We've identified one guest called Parliament Guest, and unfortunately appearing next to the SABC because it's a picture taken from a TV, who is in a room, of course not dressed for a formal meeting. So if we can just avoid that, it's not there, CEO, but I'm just saying that in the way the picture is taken, it's the COO on one side and the person who's not dressed properly in that way for the meeting. So if we can just make sure, if you are not speaking, just keep the camera off and the mic be switched off, and allow the speakers to be the ones who maximize the space that we have available. Chair of the board, you'll guide us on how you are responding. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'll request the COO, Ian Plakis, to respond to the questions, then followed by the CEO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. I'll start off with the question raised by Honorable Faku. In terms of the operating model, I would have loved to have spent more time to go into more detail on that. I trust that we'll have that opportunity at another time. In terms of the other question that was raised around what other revenue generating activities are we involved in other than advertising revenue, you will recall from the business model that I presented, I mentioned that there were 10 revenue drivers 5 of them that we're currently doing, and of that 5, 2 is involved with advertising revenue. The other 5 that I said are game changers have got nothing to do with advertising revenue, certainly not on the linear side. And the Deputy Minister has actually alluded to one of them that we have already concluded on. So if I move on to the hot topic of the evening, which is the retrenchments. Now, there's nobody that wants to be associated with a decision to make, certainly to support, or certainly to execute on a strategy or a process of retrenchment. We would all be accused of not having a heart, especially at this time of COVID. Yet it's important to understand that 99% of companies that fail, and I'm not just talking South Africa, globally, the reasons for their failure have been known to management and to key stakeholders. Now, if we just bring that closer to home and we see the failure of SOEs, those reasons are known. Now, we are not executing on a strategy that we have developed. This is a strategy that was developed by GTAC. We did not commission that, the shareholder commissioned that, and this committee has been appraised of that working. It is important to remember that that recommendation of staff reductions in terms of cost has been made from that, and it's included in our turnaround plan. It's not something new. Moreover, we are executing on a compliance issue that has been given to us by National Treasury. This is a precondition to the bailout that we have received, that we would engage in staff reductions. So we are not kicking people out. Nobody wants to be doing a process of retrenchment. This is a case of everybody wants to be associated with a popular decision. None of us wants to be associated with the right decision, especially if it is unpopular. Unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves as an organization and certainly as this oversight committee. If we move on to the issue of skills audit, and it's important to note more than one of the committee members have acknowledged that we have inherited a bloated structure. Now, it's important to differentiate between a bloated structure and incorrect skills or lack of skills. We have a bloated structure, and no matter how much we reskill people, we will still have a bloated structure. So when we're looking at the skills audit, it is not a prerequisite to a 189 process. The skills audit will enable us to develop an adequate talent management process and certainly a skills development plan and retention plan. It is not a prerequisite to any 189 process. It is untrue that we are not transparent around the 189 process. In fact, we've been more transparent than any other organization. This process is only starting on the 1st of July. And as per the regulation, we will go through a 60-day process and we will be as transparent as possible. We are only starting that process now. And we've shared a lot of information about our target operating model and where we are as an organization. So the issue that was raised around why are we recruiting while we know we're going to be doing a 189 process? Maybe the best analogy that I can use for that is if we were a ship and this ship needs to sail, we need a captain, we need a navigator, we need engineers, we need some core skills there. But if we do not have a full ship, we might not need all the waiters. That's where we find ourselves right now. We've had over 300 vacancies and people acting in critical positions. Those were the critical positions that were filled to ensure that this ship will sail in the right direction and reach its destination on time. What we have done is we've put a moratorium on all vacancies right now. And so we will go through this process first. The question was asked, who will be affected and what criteria will be used. We have not determined that yet because the process has not started. We will start the process on the 1st of July, and all of that will be done jointly with the unions and the rest of the staff members as well. And we will do this in a very humane way as possible. So if we move on to the questions, and by the way, we do welcome the 30% of the spectrum auction, and we thank you very much for that in advance. So when it comes to the issue of DTT and DTH, we have been ready for DTT for a long period of time. There's a misconception out there that we are resisting DTT. All of our channels right now, SABC 1, 2, and 3, our sports channel and our news channel, is on DTT. The challenge with DTT is that it has a footprint of only 500,000 households. Now, we cannot compete on analog with our competitors, but the rollout of DTT requires either an IDTV or a set-top box, and certainly a type of a UHF aerial. That execution is out of our control, but the impact is only on ourselves, yet we are not in charge of our own destiny. Now, it brings me to the Deputy Minister's question or statement around Education Channel. Now, we were actually approached by the Minister a couple of months, beginning of the lockdown, in terms of assisting the department with basic education at that stage. And the Minister actually hosted and brought them all on site and challenged us at that time to assist, and also challenged us to look at the option of a DTT channel for education. And we certainly took the Minister up on a challenge. Back then, the department came with a proposal with a Howie solution, which had nothing to do with us. We would just assist them in the broadcasting of that.
Sorry, whoever is flighting a document, just make sure you take it out. It does disrupt the meeting. As we continue, just wanted to be sure that IT people just help us to unshare the document. That's what I see on this side. So,
thanks, Jay.
Yes.
So we took the Minister up on a challenge, and we launched a DTT channel for education. We worked extensively with Howie and tried to assist them, but that solution wasn't forthcoming. So because it wasn't forthcoming, we offered the department to consider using our linear channels, as in SABC 1, 2, and 3. And we also offered them and said there would be an displacement cost. There's current revenue that we are generating from that, and we would want to, at least we need to displace that revenue, and we can certainly assist the department. We gave them a cost of what that displacement cost was, and then we discounted it by 40%. We also said to them, well, we don't expect them to be paying that amount of money. What we can do is jointly with them go out to sponsors, and we could do it on a deal that would actually benefit the sponsors and certainly the department as well. So, for example, if they were to sponsor one program or one lesson or 1 hour, whatever, how we would structure that, and they pay R1 million for that, we would give them an equivalent of R1 million of airtime elsewhere on our channels. Now, the department never took us up on that. I also need to stress that we've been ready with the DTT channel now for months already. The MOU is with the Department of Basic Education. We signed the MOU, it's with them, and that's for the DTT platform and for us displacing or actually doing that via YouTube as well. So we would actually provide them with a solution similar to the Howie solution, where it could be an interactive one for students as well. It is important to note that there is no cost for that. For that service, SABC is carrying all the cost. There's no cost for the department. The department has already taken us up and have allocated teachers to do those recordings, and we have those recordings. We can play them out the minute that MOU is signed. And it'd be a curriculum-based program that will be driven by the department. All we're doing is providing the platform. The department's providing the content. As soon as that MOU is signed, we will go into broadcasting that curriculum at no cost to the department. Chair, I think I'm going to hand over to my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me just talk briefly to the skills audit. As you very well know, we embarked on this process, and the first phase, it did help us to determine the kind of skills and competencies that our current employees have. Very importantly, there was another segment where we looked at the gaps in skills as well as competencies. The exercise that we've done thus far has given us a sense of the qualifications, the skills, the experience that our employees have. We even plotted the numbers against, for example, if you look under qualifications where we say people with no entry, ABET, secondary, matric, and so forth. But for us, what fascinated us more was the right-hand profile, where we began to do the comparative analysis of jobs vis-a-vis the workforce. At the SABC currently, you have about 908 employees that match from a qualifications and skills point of view. And we do have a huge number where there is no match. It's about 826. So it then gives us an opportunity to say, from a training and development point of view, upskilling, reskilling, what needs to be done. I also need to just touch on some of the questions by honorable members. I do need to emphasize that we are not being alarmist when we say we need to deal with the cost of employees in the organization. This monthly salary bill is more and more becoming untenable for the SABC. This is also worsened by the fact that there has been a huge decline in our revenues owing to the fact that most of our clients are not investing like they would normally do. But inherently, for any organization that is going through a turnaround, we have to take the tough decision of dealing with a high compensation base. Honorable Faku asked, when are we going to bring the strategy to the committee? That has been done several times. The operating model that we are sharing now actually supports that strategy. And I just need to, because a lot of members were asking, has this been shared and aligned with the shareholder? As I said, GTEC, who helped us craft this strategy, is part of this meeting. They can confirm that they did an in-depth analysis in our organization, and they came to the same conclusion that we need to deal with the high staff compensation if the SABC is to be sustainable. We do have monthly meetings with both Treasury and the shareholder, and staff optimization is part of that discussion. I do think that from a point that was made, we've shared a lot in terms of what we're doing on revenue generation. Honorable Van Dam, I think I've answered your question on the skills audit. The letter from the editorial staff, we've seen it, it was addressed to the committee, and we will be looking into it. But what we'll also not do, we do not want to get engaged in parallel processes, because that letter addresses some of the nuanced details of what will happen during the consultation process. So it's important for us to respect that regulated process. The other issue is one of unfunded mandate that Honorable Van Damme raised. Yes, indeed, we submitted proposals, as the DM was saying, and the idea there, we quantify the losses that we have incurred as the SABC because of the programs and schedulings that were caused by the various ministerial and presidential media briefings on COVID. We submitted a comprehensive plan even to the department as well as to Treasury. We have not had anything since then, so we are still hopeful that that matter will be looked into. Honorable Mlala talks about the 2 billion. Indeed, that 2 billion, I mean, that bailout was not the 3.2, was for outstanding debts and compelling content as well as maintenance. I think it is important to note that even at that point, we had historical debts that were over 2 billion to be accommodated within that. Are we pursuing people? No, we're not pursuing people. If anything, we're implementing the findings of the public protector, the SIU, as well as the recommendations of the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. Section 189 indeed has been done and due processes have been followed in that respect. Consultation has taken place, and now we're getting into the formal consultation as would be mediated by the CCMA. I've responded to the fact that we did submit proposals 3 months ago, hoping that we could get financial support on the financial impact of COVID from the SABC side. Honorable Ndlozi, Dr. Ndlozi, Honorable Dr. Majosi asked what steps have we taken in terms of the Public Protector's report. We've been aggressively dealing with all of the findings and recommendations of the Public Protector. We only have one that is outstanding, and we'll also be dealing with that in the next 14 days. In terms of the analysis that we've done, as far as the retrench or the potential retrenchments are concerned, we've looked at the organization, and these are not just low-level employees, but it's across the board. The SABC has about 409 managers out of a staff complement of 3,000. So we're looking across the board to make sure that we can streamline the structures in our business. Are we going to be coming back for a bailout? The truth of the matter is this: if we are not doing what we have to do in terms of headcount reduction and eventually to get the required 700 million, we will have to get back to government to give us for some more money, particularly when it comes to the cost of employee compensation. The SABC cannot afford the monthly bill that is huge. So to your question, are we going to have to come back? I think if we are told not to go ahead with this process, there needs to be a commitment from government to give us minimum $1 billion towards the salary bill. Then there was a question from Honorable Mackenzie. How did we reduce the cost? It was really, once again, acting in the interest of the SABC, looking at the commercial viability of the sports rights and really renegotiating. If you remember at the time, there was a huge standoff between the various parties, including a public outcry to say, why are we doing this? And at the time, we knew what we're doing was in the interest of the SABC. Do we work with community broadcasters? We are open to engagements with the community broadcasting sector. and there are options to work with them, particularly around digital platforms. Unfunded mandate TV licenses have been declining. In the past 3 years, we've been hovering around $1 billion mark revenue. And I think what then happened with the lockdown, the TV license payments declined quite significantly because of the regulations under lockdown. Also, this has to do with the purchase of TV sets and the payment due to the payments that could not happen due to limited movement. Honorable Kubeka asked if there were discussions with the shareholder. Indeed, there were. There were engagements between the chairperson and the shareholder, and there were letters written to that effect. But as I said earlier on, this could not come as a surprise because the strategy that was jointly worked with the shareholder, Treasury, and GTEC, it's very clear on the need to reduce the headcount. And I think the last point is the one that was mentioned by Honorable Madisha. We have never lied to this committee. We have always told the committee that the issue of the cost of staff compensation is inhibiting the sustainability of the organization. At no point did we come and lie to the committee to say this is not an issue. I think those are my responses, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, executives, for your responses. I do want to confirm that there's been proper and extensive consultation with the shareholder. I even penned a letter which was sent to the minister on the 10th of June. So there was proper consultation. Of course, like the CEO is saying, it's been part of the discussions and it's part of the turnaround strategy that was sponsored and approved by the board and sponsored by the minister. I do want to respectfully disagree with Honorable Madisha that we've come to the committee and lied. We've never done that. We've never lied. Everything we've presented has always been consistent and contained in the turnaround strategy that we shared with the portfolio committee. And I fully appreciate the oversight role that needs to be played by the portfolio committee, and we welcome that. But of course, I will need some assistance and clarity whether the committee is basically vetoing or opposing the board resolution in an effort to turn around the SABC, because everything we've done so far is really aimed at achieving that financial sustainability for the SABC, but doing what is in the best interest of the SABC and the country. And maybe getting clarity on that will help us as a board to understand what will be expected of us now, because we have done everything that we've been asked to do. We've done the skills audit. We've worked on the turnaround. We've now developed this target operating model in an effort really to turn around the SABC and make sure that we stop being a drain to the fiscus, and which has been our focus as the board, working with the executive. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you to the SABC board chair and the team. I see that we are almost 13 minutes before 9, but it seems there's clarity that the department wanted to still give. I see a hand there. Is it Menom Voiso?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, Chair, honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, and everyone in the House. Chair, I just wanted to clarify two issues. The one issue is the issue of that the department was consulted. Yes, indeed, there was a letter written by the board chair to the minister talking about cost containment measures, right? But in the main, it was talking about the operating model. It does not anyway discuss the issue of retrenchments. That's one. On the 12th of June, we met with the SABC CEO discussing the targeted operating model. That was not mentioned. I must add, Chair, that in light of the GTEC report, there is a pillar on cost containment measures. And amongst those cost containment measures is staff costs. And that, when it is being discussed, it has to be discussed clearly. So, for example, since 2018 November, when Minister took over, at the crux of it, she gave a mandate to all the entities, especially those that were facing reorganization, that go on a skills audit, finish it. That is one. Once you finish the skills audit, we will see where and how we place people. So SABC, we have seen in their presentation, that the one that they sent to Parliament, that is 50 pages, that they are that the skills audit is still incomplete. So that's the part that I wanted to clear. Then the second part, I think there's a bit of confusion on DTH and DTT. We are, as a country, we know we're more than 5 years behind. SABC has, I want to make it clear, has a choice to go online. No one is stopping SABC to going online. They have been making many changes around online availability, their online partners and the likes, which is fine. But DTT and DTH correctly said the policy of the country is that we are on terrestrial, but wherein there is gaps, we allow direct to home, which is DTH. That's the second thing. But the third thing, coupled with that, we need to be cognizant to the point raised by Honorable Ngozi, that even DTH itself is not cast in stone, because you have subscription broadcasters today partnering with over-the-top service providers, which SABC is not precluded from doing. So I just wanted to clear that. And then, Chair, whilst I have the floor, the issue around education, Mr. Mashishi was leading that discussion around education, the education channel. If he's on the call, if you can give him 30 seconds to clarify that. Thank you, Chair.
I just hope honorable members would have been able to follow in terms of what you've raised. May I just check, honorable members? I hope you can still follow, because I see that the other members are indicating that they have challenges of hearing or seeing people.
Yeah,
no, we can hear.
Half of the discussion we couldn't hear, Chair.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I heard everything.
Okay. May I then just check the clarity that the department wants to give on the education side?
Check the department also explained, was it a loss of 140 million or 1.5 billion?
Okay, I hear you, Honorable Faku, but I just wanted to check the person who needed to clarify on the education online part. The 30 seconds asked for.
Chairperson,
Yeah.
Chairperson, Mr. Mashishi here.
Okay. Please switch on your camera so that we also see you and the mic.
Thank you, Chair. Am I visible?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. Thanks. I think the explanation that was given by CEO is correct in the sense that when the COVID period arrived, even before that, the minister took an initiative to ensure that we must make sure that when the education is not accessible in terms of the normal, that we work with the DBE and use the SABC to cover all the learners that will not be able to take advantage of the online. And the studio is made available by the SABC, which is correct. The issue is that the DBE and ourselves and the platform provider, because when you have to provide the virtual classrooms, you need a platform, which is a software. was a bit of a challenge in that. And currently, we are working very hard to ensure that the platform is agreed to by the DBE and ourselves. And once that is done, the SABC, through its linear channels and through the DTT channel, will be able to fly it for every learner, particularly the matriculants in the country, can be able to access education. And we are working hard on that as it stands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mashishe. May I just check the DM if you would want to speak to the part of the 140 or so that Honorable Fag was saying, not the bad answer?
No, on a different.
Yes, I'll still give Honorable Ndlozi.
Okay.
I just wanted the DM to clarify that.
Can I call you back? Okay.
Chair, when
Yes.
when the public announcements on COVID-19 were made, from time to time through the Office of the Presidency and GCIS, they would ask the SABC to schedule those announcements or to be accommodated on those announcements. And at some point, you remember when COVID started, there will be delays from the side of GCIS and the presidency and so on. And that brought in itself unintended consequences to the scheduling of the SABC program. So sometimes it will happen an hour or 2 hours later. But even over and above that, just the scheduling of the public announcements, which we are required because we are a public broadcaster, had unintended consequences. And the SABC then said, with the minister in the presidency, and we then said, for us to accommodate some of this rescheduling of the SABC and them, for now, let's look at 140 million rand that can be able to mitigate some of these things. But if you look at the whole program of what COVID has brought into the scheduling and the programming of the SABC, they have a revenue of about 1.5 billion. This is what they presented to National Treasury, and they were together with our officials at the department. So the 140 is something aside. The revenue gap is the bigger picture that the whole COVID-19 has brought into the programming and the scheduling of the SABC. And on both, has not been, National Treasury could not come in and assist accordingly. So those are the things that we are seized with, and we have to, even tomorrow we have a meeting just as the department amongst ourselves to say, how do we take the process forward and make the necessary intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. May I just check, we only have 3 minutes, unless we have some grace of 10, 15 minutes to wrap up.
Yes.
But I did see that there are honorable members who are making follow-ups on the question.
No,
Honorable
answer one question for me.
Yeah, Honorable Ndlozi and Honorable Fag who are making.
Mine is a direct
And
one.
Honorable Majosi, Chair.
Honorable Majosi, I know you.
Sorry. No. Mine is a very direct one. I think perhaps the other things remain for debate. I want to state categorically that I actually think that, except the controversial question of worker retrenchments, the SABC is on the right direction. However, they ought to respond to the question of what were the outcomes in relation to the investigation on what they called the sabotage of Ramaphosa's address. They haven't responded to that. We need to know, because tomorrow we are going to deal with the SABC, which was said to have caused a sitting state president to be undermined from its ranks, which is tantamount, as I've already indicated, to a serious constitutional violation. So if they say the president was sabotaged, they then said they're going to investigate. What were the outcomes? That is all I want to hear. Thank you very much.
Honorable Faku.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I think on the issue of the DTT and DTH split policy review, I think it's important for the SABC to make sure that they mobilize a campaign to make sure that the 9 million unsubsidized households migrate to DTT platform through connecting their integrated digital TVs on the antenna. Remember, we raised this point even with USASA. I think it's important for them to do that so they can take their channels to DTT. I also think, Chairperson, there's still an opportunity to maximize the usage of DTT, transmission network grow audience, and the use of economic scale to negotiate with Sadc in transmission costs, because I hear that they are saying that there must be a policy review, but they are still in negotiations with Sadc. So I think before the policy can be reviewed, it's important that the negotiations with Sadc closed before they request the department at least to review the policy, because really we can't want to change in terms of policy direction at this stage. DTT, it's a platform that must be used by us as this country. We can't change from that chair unless SABC wants to convince us otherwise. So I wanted to raise those pointers, Chairperson.
Honorable Machos.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine, it's a one question that I asked and I did not get a clear response. In fact, I did not even hear if they did respond, the SABC, when I asked this question. But before that, maybe to agree with Honorable Ndlozi on this one, that I think the SABC is on the right track, whether it's difficult or challenging, but we think that it's on the right track. My question was on the awareness fund, 1 billion fund that has been provided by government. How much did SABC get from that, with providing space and time for government to program the awarenesses and messages that they were doing all this time? The president, when he speaks, the ministers, when they give us regulations, all those hours, how much did they get within that 1 billion? Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson.
Honorable Fandam, then Madisha, and then we'll give the CPC to give that. Honorable.
Sorry, Chair, the time allocated for this meeting is done. I myself still have very many more questions. I think we're dealing here with a very big subject. We need a couple of hours to properly interrogate the SABC. We haven't met with them in a very long time, and I think we all care very deeply about, one, ensuring that the SABC can stay on air, conducting oversights. And even though we recognize that some good that's been done, we need to guard against the SABC going down the wrong path. So can I suggest that a meeting be set up longer than 3 hours? When we normally in Parliament, sometimes our meetings are for, from morning until evening. Can we have a proper meeting with the SABC where we can sit down and properly interrogate every single issue so that we can go away being satisfied? Like, I want to go away being satisfied about the issue of retrenchments. I mean, job losses should be something that deeply concerns us and troubles us as Parliament. And I want to be very clear that, okay, they've done the audits, this is the problem, this is that, so that we don't deal with this in a populist manner. And I don't want to immediately say, you can't retrench anyone. I mean, it's a complex issue and I want to be given proper time to deal with it. So Chair, can we get an undertaking? Because members have so many more questions and we can sit here until 2 a.m. and I don't think we'll even be halfway through the issues we need to tackle. So can there be a commitment to next week or whenever or tomorrow we have a proper amount of hours set aside? That's a problem with these virtual meetings, and that they're limited and we can't properly deal with issues. That's my suggestion, Chair.
Honorable Madisha, then I'll have Honorable Kubeka.
Okay. Chairperson and members, I think we are faced with a crisis. I think we need to start there. This is a crisis, and that which I raised, that they are not telling us the truth. I still stand by that. When we meet, and I think we need to meet as urgently as it may be possible, we will be able to take that forward. What I mean is that they did come and said, we did get something, that's 3 billion, we are succeeding. Now, I am saying it is a lie, because if they said they were succeeding, but now they are saying we have never succeeded, that to me is a very serious problem. And I think we need to take it from there. When we go into discussions, we'll take it further. Now, the last thing that they have raised is that proper processes and so on are being followed with the workers now. And I'm saying that once they have arrived at the position where they are, it means there are problems. They are going to the CCMA, as he has reported, which is the last but one area. They have disagreed, it means, with the workers. They now have gone to CCMA. The last level will be the labor court, etc. We have a problem. Chairperson, let me end. Let them come back and say to us, this is how far we've been able to go. But then retrenching workers, that must never happen. It must never happen. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Kubeka, you are last.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, mine actually, I was a little bit confused on the side of saying the chair of the board, when I was asking to say, did there any discussion between the shareholder and the SABC? He's saying yes, but if you can listen what he is saying from Mepaji, I'm a little bit confused now. Because Mepaji she's trying to raise the issue of saying it was a discussion on the issue of the cost containment when they were trying to deal with the issue of the turnaround. So I just wonder, now I can understand it even myself to say it means this thing, it needs a more proper discussions, because now even on the issue of the DTT, I fully concur with Honorable Faku to say it can't be at this stage when things are here, when we are talking about even the issue of the policy, just to want to take a U-turn. We need to support in order that they must go and push and work in order that they must finalize, because if you can recall the issue of those set-top boxes that they are still sitting in the post office, those were the things that we were critically raising in this committee. So we can't just take, because it's another budget that it's concern us on the issue of saying it can't things just be reckless just like that and leave it just like that. We are still supporting to say let all these things be concluded, not leaving just like as it is, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
No, thanks, Honorable Kubeka. Honorable Mlala, I want to move towards closure, so I didn't see your hand. but I see that you are really trying to show that you want to speak. Because I also want SABC to respond to straight questions that need straight answers. I think matters that will need further discussion, I think we can look at them in the next meeting. But I don't want to suppress you. Maybe you want to raise a straight question.
No. Thanks, Chair. It's not a straight question. I think my question was not answered. I said the presentation does not talk about the commercial arm of the SABC, whether it's making progress, whether it's helping in the situation or not. But secondly, I think I agree with the latter speakers, Honorable Madisha, that we need another session. I'm not also satisfied with the explanation. Equally so, I must also caution the chairperson's tone is not very, very good. You can't say that when we do oversight, we want to derail or distract your turnaround strategy. We're merely asking questions to understand. So I don't think that should be the spirit. The spirit is that we're supposed to be helping and supporting you, not being sort of an opposition to SABC. Thanks, Chair.
May I invite the SABC to just answer to those direct questions? I think other matters may need a discussion. Thereafter, I will give a sense of the summary in terms of how we need to move forward. Chair?
COO?
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. To Honourable Majozi's question around how much did we get of the 1 billion rand from government? Zero. How much did we get from the government in terms of the ministerial messages, presidential messages that we're doing and passing on to our competitor stations at no cost? Zero. To the member Malala's question around the commercial plans, yes, while we can't share details, and we have shared the target operating model quite in detail, you will see the end result in terms of that, in terms of the revenue growth. Now, let me answer that question together with Honourable Madisha's question around the allegation of lies, which we obviously respectfully disagree with. We have not lied to the committee. We have said that we are on track. And you would have known, and you can see from the corporate plan, that we started the financial year off with a deficit of 400 million. That includes the whole issue of a 189 process, which, as I stressed, is in part of the turnaround plan, which this committee has seen, and part of the recommendations from GTAC, work that was commissioned by the department, and that is part of our precondition from National Treasury. So, Honourable Madisha also raised the question of, if we have the listenership, why are we not increasing revenue? And maybe this committee can actually assist us with that, because we have the listenership, we've got the reach, but government is not spending with us. Maybe this committee should be liaising with the AG to say that that would be fruitless and wasteful expenditure for government to be spending on any other platform other than the SABC, because we have the reach. Government needs to speak to the people, so via us. To the question from Honourable Ndlozi around the sabotage of President's address, the matter is still ongoing, and there's outstanding litigation on that, so it is sub judice, so we can't comment on that just yet. But we certainly will brief this committee once that matter is concluded. Then on the whole issue of DTT, you know, the Electronic Commissions Act, Section 2 of it, is very, very clear that that we need to promote interoperability and interconnected electronic networks. It goes further on to say that it should be technology neutral. Now, if you look at the Broadcast Digital Migration Policy, Section 7.2 of it, contradicts that and limits the SABC to only 16% for DTH. In other words, the policy is now not being technology neutral. Our competitors don't have to comply with that. We're the only ones that have to. So our hands are tied behind our back. We are not against DTT. DTT is going to be with us forever and a day. What we do want is the freedom to be able to choose the platform as per what the Act is saying. And so we're in desperate need of policy and regulatory reform. Furthermore, if you look at the regulation, section 10, it further contradicts the policy as well. The policy says we must have 84% on DTT. The regulation says we must have 95% on DTT. We have to strip that out and allow us to be able to enable the listeners out there at a cost-effective platform for them. We don't want to just reach 100%. We want to exceed that. Thank you, Chair.
CEO?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the question from Honorable Mlala, asking about the effectiveness of our revenue generation strategies, I just need to take a step back and share what I said earlier. Of the 6.5 billion that we generated, it was purely based on the strategies that we have around revenue. 82% of that came from commercial activities, advertising, carriage deals, as well as sponsorship. And I once again need to reiterate what we said earlier. Only 3% of that came from government. I think the second issue is just to address the issue that has been repeated again by Honorable Madisha. We have never lied to this committee. If you look at the corporate plan that we tabled in Parliament, that was tabled and approved by all people involved, including the department, it shows that the retrenchment or the staff optimization is part of the plan. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think from our side, we are done, and we appreciate the opportunity, really. The only part that I really want to emphasize is that we've done everything possible. We've been back and forth in terms of really trying to diagnose, come up with a turnaround strategy that works, and would really plead for support of this board, of the portfolio committee, to enable us to get SABC to be financially viable. And we really looking forward to your support in making sure that we turn around this place within the reasonable time. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Chair of the Board and your team, Minister and Deputy Minister, officials of the department for all that you've shared with us in responding to the questions. Of course, looking at the time, it does say that we are dealing with a very difficult matter, that we've gone beyond our scheduled time. And it's quite clear from that we still have to have a discussion, and we'll have to beg for indulgence of Parliament, understanding the program of Parliament, that we have an opportunity to still have an engagement with SABC with more time. However, that doesn't mean there was no discussion and a view in the committee. Firstly, we should understand that we do appreciate, I think a number of members would have put that across, so that we don't leave the meeting as though it was about retrenchments. That the work that's being done, as demonstrated in the plan, you have many greens in terms of what has been done in the different areas of work in terms of your turnaround strategy. And the committee is still in support of that. And there's no confusion in the committee as to how you got the bailout, that it had preconditions that you needed to meet, and those are linked to the turnaround strategy. But I think where we probably miss each other, which is something probably on reflection, even on your side, outside of the meeting, you'd understand what members are saying, is that your page 19 of your report is showing red on the processes that relates to your HR, because a number of those is subject to your consultation process, your finalization of your skills audit, which would have been the same reason previously that you had to go and work on. Of course, with a great deal of respect, I think in our view, the letter was prematurely written out whilst you are engaged in a process. Because then if you write to everybody, you are sending panic to everyone and uncertainty. That on its own can bring instability that you may have worked over in a period of time to bring the institution to where it's supposed to. So I'm just saying that it shouldn't be that members are not really applying their minds on this. But as I say, your page 19 of the actual report on the strategy, it's got clear activities that have been outlined in order to reach finality on the matter. And from a consultation point of view, I think that's very important, that there must be confidence even in those that you are consulting with, that it's still in good faith. And that's why it's important to manage what you send out there. So I just thought it's important that as we close, we clarify that point, that it's not just a populist stance that says we don't want to be associated with retrenchment, nobody wants to be because then in that score, it would mean a leadership that runs away from unpopular decisions. And that's not who we are. So we should clarify that so that nobody will speak for us if we don't do it. And this is the reason also that we will support you in ensuring that the department does what it is also expected to do. The engagements that you need to see happening with Sadc, that they do not remain only on the plans that there will be consultation, but that there can be conclusion on what is to be done in that regard, right? Because that's probably even where the bulk of the money on the bailout that you received, you had to go and service the debt you have, and from your records, you still have some money to continue to pay. You are raising a very valid point that the migration process is not really in your control, but in the other entity of the department. And as this committee, when we met USASA in particular, we were very clear about timelines to implement, because then you are holding, they're holding also yourselves as the broadcaster in that score. So I'm just saying that those meetings have to happen. This includes your application for the COVID-19 relief, which is not necessarily a bailout, but a relief, like it is happening with the other sectors and so on. But it also presents, I think it's a Deputy Minister who raised that, it also presents an opportunity for you as you look at other channels that you need to put in the content that's available, whether it's health, it's education. I heard the COO putting it boldly that we'll do it free of charge. It may be something that you want to relook at that, given the finances of SABC, so that you don't commit on one side that you are doing it for free, and then later on we then say there's zero support in terms of finance on all these activities that you do in that regard. So the part about the regulation I think the committee has raised this matter a number of times, whether you talk to this mass care regulation, which I thought the SABC would really speak for itself on this, whether it is a must carry, must pay situation, or in fact it has put them in the adverse situation that they find themselves in, whether it's a contributing factor. So that as you deal with that, we know it is also about repositioning the national broadcaster. I think the department also listened to this point, and the committee I know has raised this point even with community broadcasters, the government spending, that the spending must really show that we have interest in helping the broadcaster to get out of the challenges that they are in and that they can be sustainable. So I just thought it's important just to lift up those points so that the meeting leaves with an understanding that from where we are, it's prematurely. Implement page 19, go through all those consultation processes, look at the upskilling, reskilling of people, redeployments as the activities are saying, so that when you come back to us and say there are people who are not deployable, you've tried to do everything, and this is probably the pool you have. You yourselves have said it, that at some point you estimated it to be around 900. It's now estimated at 600. You can give us which areas are affected at this point in time, because that work is not complete. And therefore, you'd understand, as I say, with a great deal of respect, that this was a bit prematurely. Engage the process, come back to the committee. However, other things that need to be done to assist the SABC would have to continue. We may, as I said, we may have to go to Parliament. We'll do that immediately to try and see if we can't get the other slots in the remaining days, or else at least get an exception to even use maybe a day or two in the period of recess that we're getting in the best interest of the country, that we deal with the matters that are in SABC. Just a specific answer, Chair of the Board. All that we're putting before you is not in any way an attempt to veto a board decision on the turnaround strategy. We support this turnaround strategy because SABC, as a national broadcaster, would want it to be viable. However, we also support that the processes must not just be fair, but must be seen to be fair, and that all stakeholders have been taken on board. And you may find that in that consultation process, most of the perceptions and all other things that create the panic can be resolved without looking at courts and so on. I think that's important. Maybe the last point really is that indeed we are still interested when you come back on the efficiencies that you talked about. What does that mean? As I think the DM said it, you have cases, for example, where we think you shouldn't be prolonging the case, paying a lot of money to be represented by senior counsel, when the matter is really a settled matter, there's no criminality and so on. But where there's criminality, I think that's what you must take back. We are still supporting the efforts to ensure that remedial actions that have been recommended are implemented. That's another way of ensuring that the broadcaster cleans itself in terms of the image where everything just collapses. Even on that, the expectation is still that it's not just a fair process, but it seemed to be fair. That there's no targeting of people unnecessarily, but there is no turning of a blind eye on wrongdoing that happens. I think that's what you must live with from this committee meeting today. And we take it that you heard us well. And so that when we communicate tomorrow, you don't say, we never heard you, you've heard us. I take it. Otherwise, with that, thanks, honorable members. I know you've taken it for quite long, but it's not for us. We're doing it for the people of the country. I see the board chair raising a hand to vehemently object to this summary. As a Democrat, I would still allow you to say the point you want to say. I see your hand. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I really appreciate giving me a chance to speak. Some of the details that the honorable members are requesting will only come out of the consultation process as dictated by the Labour Relations Act. Until we engage with the unions in that process that will be championed and facilitated by the CCMA, we will not be able to give those details because we have to consult with the labour unions and agree with them on how we proceed. So the reality is I'm just begging for this committee to allow that process facilitated by the CCMA to continue so that then we can come back with further details after having engaged and consulted with the unions.
I think the point to make, Chair, I thought you heard our point, is that we have dealt with the letter that in our belief would have been premature if you are engaged in a process of consultation, and will be briefed about the consultation processes. We'll still have you coming before us, and we take up a discussion. Indeed, on matters that jeopardize a particular process, you'll be able to indicate what the discomfort is on those matters. So I don't think we are far from each other on that. But honorable members, I take it that you really had a very long one from the budget to this meeting.
Yeah.
And thanks for really staying the course. Thank you, Minister and Deputy Minister, as well as South Africans who have been with us as we're discussing this very difficult matter. But I'm sure they are assured that it's...
I'm sorry, Chair. Just one point where I want to emphasize what you said. I'm not adding an additional point. If you can indulge me, Chair.
I'm
just
listening.
A quick one. Yes. Let me just caution the SABC board, and let me echo you in saying that they can't be vetoed. They can speak like that to the minister, but we are the body that they report to. So in the next engagement, please bear that in mind. Don't speak to us like that. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable members, the meeting stays adjourned till we meet the SABC.
Chairperson, you seem to be accepting what Honorable Van Dam is raising, that SABC can speak to the minister in the manner that Honorable Van Dam does not.
Stella,
Honorable Van Dam, maybe you can clarify your point.
Just to remind her that the minister here is an honorable member, just like
relax. I said that the SABC does not report to the minister. She must relax, bring it down. I meant that the SABC reports to us.
The SABC must disrespect the minister.
You must relax.
Okay, honorable members.
Okay, you are the only member of parliament here. This minister is a member of parliament just like you. And I'm not going to be disrespected by you, Honorable Van Dam. You're that you're not a minister and you will never be because of the party you belong to. This is not my issue.
Can you adjourn the meeting, Chair?
So that we can